Welcome to this segment of Mind You and Food, brought to you by BeSimply.
Sometimes my hair's alright, I dwell on my past lives, act like I'm transcending, but I gotta do my best to do what mama says, not get offended. Gotta try to abide.
Welcome to this segment of Mind You and Food. This is Suzannetoro, and I want to thank you for joining us today. As mentioned, this segment is brought to you by BeSimply, and today we're going to dive a little deeper into the food alchemy of the fall season here in the Northern Hemisphere. And a big shout out for our brothers and sisters in the Southern Hemisphere and all of those rocking the equator. So as we examine food and the season starts to get a little colder, we want to encourage all of you to continue to eat warm foods. Today we're going to go over a few recipes, and we're also going to talk about grief and joy as it relates to our physical, emotional, and spiritual body. So to start with, we've been talking about the lungs and the large intestines. And at this time of year, we really, like the trees are mirroring to us or modeling for us to let go of the leaves and welcome in the new, which is happening in the Southern Hemisphere in springtime. And as we do this, we can make peace with what has occurred. We can let go of past incidents and traumas and so forth. And when we do this, this creates space for joy and knowing and just feeling content. And right now, what I've been observing, and it's really beautiful, everyone's doing their part, doing their ancestral healing. They are working on their inner self, and a lot of that is uncomfortable. It can feel uncomfortable. However, there's so many things that can be offered to you as you go through that. And I would like to encourage everyone, as much as you want to point fingers at one person or another, remember that we evolve, and this isn't the blame game. The circumstance is the circumstance, and then it's up to each self to decide how they want to relate and how they want to shift and how they can re-meet certain situations and how potentially they need to walk away from certain situations. And it's the evolution that's occurring right now. The potential is super powerful. So when we look at releasing grief and the let go of things stored both in our lungs and in our large intestines, it creates more room for absorption of the breath, absorption of water, all these things that might not get utilized. So today I thought, I've given you some nourishing tips on the lungs, and the previous recipes you can look up on my website. I am getting caught up, so you can check them out there. So understand that we have the large intestines, which really helps absorb the yet to be utilized water and minerals to help in creating the waste that leaves our body. And honestly, a quick way to see if you're in healthy harmony with yourself is if you're not having consistent bowel movements. This is a sign that stagnation's occurring. So for some people, their lungs may work great, but there's stagnations in the intestines, or the opposite. So we want to open up both these channels so that you can be free. So oftentimes when I take people on retreats, I remind them that we all have to eliminate waste and not to be embarrassed by it. And in fact, we want to keep it moving. And this is one of the core focuses in Ayurveda is to keep the system moving, all parts of the system, but especially the digestive system. And really that starts, in our liver and then moves down, which our brothers and sisters in the southern hemisphere are addressing their liver at this time of year. So when we look at the large intestines, it also has this important job to maintain the 500 plus bacteria that exist in the intestines. So, we've gone through this brouhaha here on planet Earth and kind of got a little confused about what viruses and bacteria are, because they actually exist in us and around us. So it's really about keeping the system in balance so it can keep everything in harmony. It's when it gets out of balance that then infection sets in. And so this isn't some external force that's going to be set upon you, unless it's an agency that has created, these outside forces. Those would be man-made. But in your natural organic body, you have a viral load, you have a bacterial load, and your body does all these amazing things to keep it in harmony. I mean, giving gratitude for that every single day is just something so profound. And then, as we're in the season where people are like, okay, I got to ramp up and I got to pump myself with extra vitamins and all these different things. But really it's about, is my system in balance? And so one key way for you to just take a quick check-in at this time of year is, are you digesting your food, and is it moving through your system consistently and effortlessly? So I always give people the analogy when I work with them on cleansing that their basically bowel movements are going to want to be like icing on a cake. They're going to move through that pastry bag just effortless. And so if you're not there, message me, because this isn't a one size fits all. This isn't like do this and that's going to happen. But it's really important to acknowledge that, because the more that energy, your food and your waste gets stacked up in your system, over time, you're going to have problems in the gut and throughout the body. So this is a time of year to evaluate how your breath is and how things are moving through the body. And so there's lots of ways that we can go through the system to bring it into balance. I'm going to touch on some general components. As many of you may have heard, one size doesn't fit all. That's my motto, and I will stick by that. It's just not possible. I will debate anyone about that. It's not possible. Our body is amazing, but each one of you are unique. So the first test that you can do is to check, one, am I having regular bowel movements? And is my nutrition such that there's stuff for my digestive system and my body to absorb that's beneficial? Especially this time of year, we're naturally drying, and then there's a propensity to increase foods that actually dehydrate the system, sugar being one of them. So we want to bring in oils and hydration to help the system. A simple way that you can help the large intestine, because it's looking for the water and the minerals, is to make sure your system is hydrated and that you're getting good hydration. This can happen through fruits and vegetables that are clean. If you don't have access to clean water, bottled water is not necessarily clean, and even from those machines in the store. If you want to learn more about that, I'm happy to have a one-on-one with you to share some options that might work for you and your family. But, if it's a little bit cleaner than what's coming out of the tap, that's great. But a simple way, if you can't fully access that, is to get watery fruits and vegetables in your system daily to help with hydration. And that's going to be essential. And then the other thing that naturally should occur in the water is minerals. So if you're completely filtering your water and it's not remineralized, then you're going to want to make sure you bring in some of that mineral water. This is really awesome for the lungs, the liver, and the intestines. There's several brands that are mineral, not sparkling, mineral water. And you'll see all the different components they have in there. And you can put a bunch of lime in there, or lemon, or orange, and really see what feels good to you as you work through the season and bring yourself in harmony. And just like anything, it's a sweet spot. So we don't want to overdo it with anything that you might be giving yourself. So as we look further, into the intestines and the impact and into the lungs, this is where we would look towards Ayurveda and see that sadness and grief can lead to depression. Stagnation in the intestines can lead to depression. And it can also lead to stress, all kinds of things, irritability, insomnia, I can say that word, and that builds. And so if that's not addressed, what can happen is in the fall that's building, and it gets even more so in the winter. And then in the spring, really there might be a lot to release from the system and even start to build some anger. And that's why we've talked about before, grief and anger are part of the process when someone experiences death. And the season in between here and there is death. And that's not by accident. Nature's walking us through shedding, kind of dying to something that we need to let go. And then maybe there's anger because of that loss, but move into the rebirth. So if you think about that, this alchemy that we're being walked through. And so as you evaluate like what's going on for yourself, you may say, well, what can I do about that? Well, there's a lot you can do about it. I've just given you a couple ideas that you can look at. What's going into the system, make sure that you're getting your water, make sure you're getting your minerals and nutrient-rich food. And then from there, emotionally, you want to really welcome yourself to honor the emotions that are coming in. And this is another thing I want to talk about, that if you have grief or anger, any emotions that are potentially, if there's too much of them, they will degrade this relationship with self and others. So in that respect, if we honor our emotions as they come up, process them and move beyond, then we don't have a lot of inner work to do and we're not carrying luggage around everywhere. So if possible, take the time to give yourself the space to process emotion. Even when upheaval happens, give yourself the space to allow the things to settle and then reapproach the situation. If we don't learn to manage our emotions, this is where it starts to tear down our relationship with self and others. Now, what happens is as our society becomes a little bit more sophisticated in dealing with emotions, it's much more effortless. It's not a big to-do. It's like, oh, I'm feeling this, okay. But, we're all finding our way. These are new things. And as everyone's doing their deep inner work, their ancestral healing, all of this at once, there's a little push and pull that might be happening internally and externally. So we're going to give you guys a couple great tips that you can do to assist you in processing emotion and finding areas in the body that can give you some relief. So I'd like you to open up your hands, and if you know from the pointer finger to the thumb, there's a little web part. On both hands, you can take your other thumb and your pointer finger and massage that area. This is one area that actually can help you with your large intestines. And even if you get that tension, all of that, it'll help release that. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, if you're feeling like you need a little pep in your step, if you feel that you're irritable, you can massage these areas and you can notice if they're tender there. So give yourself a little acupressure. This also is a good spot to hold if you have a headache. Headaches sometimes come on when we're dehydrated or when we're irritable, when we're stressed. So by massaging these areas, and then you could spread out with your hands, get a nice oil, because our skin, as mentioned during this time of year, can be dry, cold. We want to get warm oils on the system as much as possible. The more lubricated we are, the better that our digestion is going to run, and those bowel movements will run effortlessly. So that's one way you can assist yourself. And then rather than giving a bunch of remedies on how to get the bowels in order, reach out to me. You can book a consult. We can talk about it and find something that works for you. Also, I really encourage all my brothers and sisters out there, do not manipulate your bowels because you're trying to control your body in a certain way. This can be extremely harmful and cause a lot of situations for yourself that's like stopping and starting, and unhealthy habits from digestion to your relationship with food and so forth. So please reach out. I can help you. I have a lot of insight and am quite successful at getting people flowing naturally. So from there, it's funny to talk about digestion and elimination and then go into recipes. What can happen when we have, we'll kind of make a little bridge, when we have depression, grief, sadness. Sometimes we want to eat, sometimes we overeat. So as we've been talking about comfort food, that's a great way to help people feel good and healthy about situations. They go and prepare food and give it to someone and they feel better. They don't know how to help someone. That's a great way. And for you to also take the time to nourish yourself and get out of maybe feeling stuck and limited in the emotions you're dealing with. Some fun foods that you can do this time of year. I just made these last night. I made some empanadas, chicken, mushroom, and spinach with a coconut cream empanadas. They were super yummy. I will be posting that recipe in the next week. And simple, you can make your crust, or if you don't have space or time, you can get some store-bought rolled. You roll it out. You get about a 4 or 5 inch bowl. You cut it into circles around. That will be your empanada, the crust. And then from there, you're going to take coconut milk with cream. You're going to take some skin, chicken thighs, or if you don't want it to be that way, then just more mushrooms. You're going to take some mushrooms, some carrots. You're going to roast a russet potato before. You're going to cube all these up, celery, onions, garlic. You're going to cube it all up. You're going to put it in a wok or a big stir fry pan. You're going to use oil and butter, salt, thyme, a little, I like to spice it up. That's another good thing to get the heat moving in both areas, lung and intestines. And then from there, you're just going to cook it so it's nice and yummy. Keep adding broth so it's has a good creamy consistency to it. And then you're going to scoop about a tablespoon and a half in your pre-cut out circles. You're going to fold it over with a fork, or your thumb, cinch off the edges, place these on a cookie sheet. It's going to take about 20 to 25 minutes in the oven at 375 till they're nice toasty. The crusts are cooked. You can tap on them. You can feel that it's all cooked all the way through. And those are all done. While that happens, if you have extra filling, what I did is I made it into a side. I added extra mushrooms, I added fresh spinach, and it was super yummy on the side and for kind of a dipping, almost like a chunky gravy. And the other component that I added was some broccoli, a great source of a lot of nutrients that help us this time of year. And from there, you're going to saute that broccoli. I did mine in a wok, garlic, some mushrooms, some slivered almonds, and olive oil. And then you're going to saute those up just really lightly, salt, pepper. And then from there, add a little water, cover it up and steam it. What I've been noticing is the crops over the past couple of years of broccoli have been coming out very interesting. so the steaming can take a little bit longer. And what I had last night was bright green, all organic. But yeah, something's been happening with the soil. It just can depend where you're sourcing it from and where you're getting it from. So these are simple meals that you can prepare for yourself. The fun thing about empanadas, you can make extra. You can freeze those, put them in the freezer. Even the side that I mentioned, you could cream that whole thing up and make it like a cream of mushroom chicken soup. Also, so there's lots of things. I was talking to a client this week that from an Ayurvedic perspective, you want to make fresh food every day, but that's not always possible. So sometimes I'll repurpose part of what I am making into a new recipe the next night. So for example, you make chicken, rice, and a veggie. The next night is not looking so great. So you chop that all up really fine. You take your rice, day old rice, you take the veggies chopped up, add some fresh veggies and an egg, and you have chicken fried rice. And you can add on some additional sauce, whether it's soy sauce, hot sauce, whatever you want to flavor it with. And then you have a nice stir-fried rice. Another component that I love to do now that we're coming into Thanksgiving is I'll take those mashed potatoes and I'll make them into a wonderful appetizer the next day. These round mashed potato ball puffs. I put them into the balls. I add panko flakes and then I pan fry them on the outside. I'll see if I can link that recipe into the page when I post for you guys to experience that too. So you can have a lot of fun repurposing. And just like I mentioned, the side of the empanadas, you can make that into a soup the next day, jazz it up with a few fresh veggies, and it tastes like a brand new meal. So with that being said, we're going to exit out with a little bit more of Kadri Scott, keep it local. And may you all have a beautiful time with your family, your friends, your neighbors, or yourself during this upcoming week here in North America, where we celebrate that holiday called Thanksgiving, gratitude, and opportunity to give thanks for that which you have. And for all those that maybe this is a difficult time of year, I want you to remind you you're not alone. And if you need someone to talk to, reach out, send me a DM. I will make myself available as soon as possible. I know this can be hard for many when they're going through the holiday seasons and going through some inner work. Until next time, this is Suzanne signing out with a full heart, a soft gaze, a deep bow, and a namaste. Be simply. Once again, I want to thank you for listening to this segment of Mind You and Food, brought to you by BeSimply. We're going to exit out with little Kadri Scott. Keep it local.
Act like I'm transcending, but I gotta do my best to do what mama says, not get offended. Gotta try to abide. If you try not to fight it, you may feel quite enlightened, maybe even guided. It may take some practice before you exact it, but I promise it's worth your while. Gotta try to abide between you and I have yet to master I do my best, maybe I've earned my rest till the next life. Gotta try to abide between you and I have yet to master mine. Be right here, not just sorrows or tears. Take care of my